Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Monir El Azzouzi from easymedicaldevice.com. And today we will talk about another IEC standard, which is the IEC 60601. This is a standard that is really important. And I have with me Leo Eisner, who is the IEC 6601 guys, so we can call him like that. And he's really an expert in IEC 6601, and he will be really helping us to understand all about the standard and how it is working, who needs that, etc., etc. So, Leo, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Thanks, Monir. Good to be here.
No, great. Thank you for being here. So, Leo, as usual on the podcast, can you make an introduction of yourself, and then we can go to the next topics?
Sure, I'd love to. So I'm the head of Eisner Security Consultants. I've been doing this for 22 years, believe it or not. It's incredible I've been doing it this long. I've been involved with 601 for about 26 years. That's medical electrical equipment. And I've been involved in the development of the standard for about 15 years on many different committees, including the Interpretations Committee. I've been involved more recently in the last year or two with the risk management group of the CB scheme. And very recently, I've joined the ISO 15223-1 labeling committee. I was on an expert panel for ASCA, which is the accreditation scheme for FDA, the CDRH Standards Committee, Standards and Conformity Assessment Group back in 2018. I've audited for several notified bodies, including NSAI, who I contract for lately. And I started my career back in 1985, believe it or not. So that blows my mind. That's exactly 35 years ago. I started thinking about that last night. I went, 35 years? I've been working 35 years? And it was all non-medical back then. It was fire alarms, burglar alarms, ATMs, heating, air conditioning, microwaves, computers, plastics. But after 9 years of that, I got tired of UL. I left. I found medical, and I've never turned back ever since.
No, I think it's really great. I like those stories because it's really show that you are really passionate to this topic and all the information that is linked to that. And I can imagine that doing that since so long time, so many years, it can make you really a big expert and really a guru on this area. And really thank you for being here just to educate us a bit more on this topic, because I think it's really an important one for medical device companies. There is a lot of companies that need that, but maybe they don't really understand it. So let's try now to explain to them what's working. So just maybe for the audience, where are you based?
Where am I based? In what a lot of people call burning Portland, Oregon currently. Okay. I've gotten so many emails and calls lately concerned that we're in trouble because downtown Portland is having so much trouble right now with the government, with Trump, and luckily we're not having trouble, but it's a little concerning. Luckily, we're not having any.
I follow the news in the US, so I know that this is maybe a bit difficult there. Are you acting only for the US market, or you are also acting for the EU market, or?
Oh, all around the world. We help everywhere, wherever we can. There are some oddball countries that are a little hard to figure out, but mostly IEC will get you around the world.
Great for that. Okay, so let's jump in now to the topic. So for maybe some people that are listening now and that don't know at all what is IEC 6601, how would you describe that? How would you help them to have a better understanding of this standard and how it operates?
So the general standard IEC 60601 is for medical electrical equipment. It covers all different types of medical electrical equipment, from small equipment to large scale equipment. So it can be for infusion pumps, it can be for large scale gamma equipment, it can be for a small little handheld wellness device, it can be for a laser therapeutic device, it can be for an ultrasound device, it can be for lots of different medical devices, it can be for blood pressure device, it can be for any active being powered by electricity, a battery operated device, a wall powered device, a nuclear powered device, anything that's powered by some type of electricity.
So it's great. So it means that if you have no electricity within your device, you can forget this standard. We are not talking, you are not on the focus of that at all. So in terms of the standard, so I know it because I mean, I see all the structure of the standard, but there is so many versions, if I can say, of collaterals that are existing, so many numbers. There is 6601 is the main one, but you have so many -1, -2, et cetera, et cetera. So is there kind of an end to those numbers because there is so many? So what's that for?
Okay, so that's where the series does get complicated very quickly, but it isn't as complicated as you think. So there are 3 basic extensions. There's 60601-1. That's the general standard. That's what I call the mothership. That's sort of this guy, as I call it. This is was my Bible, but this is old. This is from the 1990s.
Okay.
So I'm going to put it away. Actually, do I have? Oh, I have my newer version here. So this is a newer looking one.
What is the date for the new version?
If you can see it.
What is
this one's? This is an older version of the newer one. This is 2005, but it's also 2012.
Okay, 2012.
This isn't quite. That's not quite the updated one, but it's close enough. So that's 3rd edition with Amendment 1. That's the general standard. So 60601 with a -1.
Yeah.
So that's the general standard. Then you get to the collaterals. The collaterals are add in EMC or usability or alarms, environmentally safe, environmentally conscious design, which is 1-9, alarms is 1-8, usability is 1-6. These are things that apply the collaterals, which are the -1s, -XX, which I have a diagram that you can download for show notes, which I'll have information that sort of displays the layout of this, of the
different structure,
the format.
Exactly. So I can get that. I can get that, and I will put that in the show notes, and the people can download that directly. Yeah.
Perfect. So going across will be the collaterals, and going down, I'll explain in a minute, will be the particulars. So the collaterals apply in a lot of cases. A lot of them will apply to many products, and the particulars will be specific to a type of technology.
Okay.
So the collaterals 1-2 EMC applies to every single medical electrical device. EMC applies to everyone. Usability, unless you're in a really oddball situation, usability is going to apply to every single one, especially for FDA, especially for EU MDR. You're going to have to apply that anyway. Alarms may or may not, depends on your device if you have alarms or they apply. Environmentally conscious design, almost no one's applying that around the world other than Brazil, and Brazil's only applying some labeling requirements. Okay. 1-10 closed loop, blah, blah, blah. Hardly, very few products really have that. Home use 1-11 applies to products that are home use environment. 1-12 is EMS, emergency medical services. It only applies if your product is in that environment. The -2s are specific to a particular technology like infusion pumps.
Okay.
Or another real common one is -2 is high frequency surgical equipment. And there's lots of other -2s. They're ranging up to the -2-70s, I think, or we may be in the 80s now.
Yeah, and so thank you for this description, because it's interesting to have all, as you said, all the collaterals that applies to everybody and the particulars that applies to specific devices. What I discovered when I made my research is that I find another series which is called 80601 series. So I was already struggling with the 6601. Now I have the 80601. So I asked myself, what is this? Is it different, or is it just a continuous series for the 6601, or?
So that is not a different series. It's more historical than anything else. So that is only because those are standards that were developed by a joint committee between ISO and IEC.
Okay.
That's the only reason they decided to put an 80 in front of the 60.
And
so instead of 60601, now it's 80601, saying that standard was developed by IEC and ISO.
Okay.
And for the standard that I'm a convener of, it's 80601. And the only reason it's a joint committee is we didn't have enough votes on the IEC side to make it a standard by itself through IEC, so I had to go out and get votes from ISO as well as IEC to make it even a standard.
Okay, so it's
so there was politics on that side.
It's a growing family, so it's like a brother-in-law or something like that that is on the side. So but it's the same family at the end. So it's great to have that. So now that we have a better understanding, if I can say, of the structure, so let's say that we have in the audience a lot of medical device manufacturers. Which one, if I can say, should really think of those medical devices? So we talked earlier to say it's maybe small equipment, big equipment, etc. Do you have some specific companies that really need to think about that, because it's really maybe will be a problem for them because they'll have a lot of tests to do to be compliant to this IEC standard?
Well, I think any medical device company that's an electrical medical device will have tests under the standard. So it doesn't matter if it's a small piece of equipment or a big piece of equipment. A bigger piece of equipment like a gamma camera or an X-ray is probably going to have more tests involved because of the additional mechanical testing, electrical testing, and the complexity of the device. But also, if you have additional particular standards involved, there's some products that have 5, 6, 7, 8 particular standards. You're going to have additional tests that are involved because you have all these additional particular standards involved. But so it's not just the size of the device or the type of device, but it's also the number of particular standards or the number of functions that are involved in the device that are going to determine the complexity of the device. Also, the application. If you have multiple intended uses or multiple essential performance, which I'll talk about later, I assume. I think that's one of our questions we're talking about a little bit. That's going to affect your test plan. And depending on your test plan, that's going to affect how much testing you're going to have.
So when we are talking about these standards, mainly this is something that you will have to have all the testing. We should have to have them to answer a certain risk maybe for the device or a certain performance for the device, and to answer one of the GSPR requirements within the EU MDR, for example. If you are a company that is having those products, I mean, it's mandatory for you to have that on the GSPR to say yes, this is the standard I'm using to prove that, or this is the standard I'm using to prove that. So you cannot go without it. So it's really something that manufacturers have to understand. This standard is something that mainly everybody has to really apply. As you mentioned, if you are really having electrical equipment. In the US, is this something that also they are looking at? Is there some kind of requirements that says you have to use the standards?
Well, it's not quite in the same sense, but yes, if you look at the FDA does have it as a recognized consensus standard, but FDA looks at it as a voluntary standard, just like most of FDA's standards are voluntary as recognized consensus standards, but you have a high bar to pass if you don't follow the FDA's recognized consensus standards.
Yeah, it's something that is really interesting because, yeah, some people are seeing the word voluntary like maybe I should not use that, but really it's voluntary, but highly recommended, if I can say, because without...
Well, it's the same thing with MDR. I mean, state of the art and the harmonized list are the same thing. They're really voluntary, but if you don't follow them, you have a high bar to pass.
It's exactly that. So I think it's something that you have to understand, that voluntary doesn't mean that you should not use it. It means that it can mean it's highly recommended, even if it's just...
so what's equivalent if you don't follow it?
Yeah, this is the thing, is that if people are not following that, they have to create new tests, but they have to convince the agencies or the regulators that those tests
or the reviewer, whatever. And you have to show with risk management.
Yeah, exactly. So there is, as I said, a lot of things that people have to
why make your life harder?
Yeah, if you try to make your life harder, yeah, don't use IEC 60601. But if you want to make it easier, so use that, and it's everybody will recognize it, and nobody will really complain on that. Leo, so in terms of the IEC standard, so what is, I mean, we have, for example, the ISO 13485 standard, which is a standard that is asking you to build your quality management system and is providing you a lot of procedures that you have to build and to show that. What is exactly the content of this IEC 60601? Is it for creation of procedures, or is it only for testing, or is it some requirements that you have to show the auditors or the inspectors that you are following? So what is the outcome of this standard exactly?
On the front end, you need to look at 601 as the standard and look at all the requirements. And there's a whole list of requirements that say compliance is verified by looking at the requirement of the standard against the risk management file. And so you need to look at the requirement of the standard and build your, I'm not quite saying this right, but basically put together a risk management file that says, this is how I'm meeting this requirement based on my risk analysis for this specific requirement of the standard. So it's sort of building from your risk analysis from the 601 standard and saying, this is how I meet the standard. And it's sort of it's a building block.
Yeah, so it means that you are looking at your risk. What are the risks possible for your standard? Like we talked about the emergency risks or
medical.
Like that. So then you are mitigating those risks with this standard. We're saying I've done this test and this test and this test. So the risk in terms of emergency alarm, etc., is solved because we have that available within this test. So mainly, it's not just going directly to the standards. You have first to work really on your risk and evaluate all the risk possible. So then you can mitigate those risks with all the tests that you will be doing for the standards. Mainly when we are working on the IEC standards or the IEC 60601, as we've said, there is a big list of all the standards with collaterals, with particulars, with all those things. So it's not something that we have to decide from the beginning to say, we'll go through this one and this one and this one. It's maybe something that will arrive later when we'll be on the design phase. We'll make some tests. We'll have to answer to some requirements that are maybe on the FDA requirements or EU MDR requirements. And then from there, we can say, okay, we'll use this standard, so the IEC 601-2 or -4 or -9, etc., for answering some of those requirements. Is it correct?
So at the early design phase, what we do as a group is we'll sit down with a client and understand what the product is, and then go through and define what standards apply to them. And then from there, we'll go through and review the product and define what standards apply, regulations, requirements, guidances, etc., and then start building out their requirement matrix and their product specs. And from there, we'll go through and identify what their issues are and where their missing gaps are. And with that, we'll go through and show the gaps and build out their the gaps and identify these are the tests that will be needed. And with that, we'll also show where their risk management file items need to be filled in. So as they're getting ready for testing, they'll start filling in their risk management file documentation because they need to do that before they get ready for testing. They'll also have to identify all their essential performance before they get ready for testing, because they have to do that as a step before they get into testing, because they have to also set that up for the EMC test plan. So which is an important step. This all has to be done before they go into testing. Otherwise, they're going to fail testing.
So I think it's an important point here. So as we said, preparation is really important. You cannot go and say
huge step.
Yeah, it's what is important here is to say, guys, when we are going for maybe some testing, don't just think, oh, I will apply IEC 60601. I think you'll have maybe to get some experts like Leo and really sit down, talk about your product, talk about all what you are doing and what you are trying to prove here. And then here you are building really your strategy for the testing and doing everything. Because Leo, can you tell us maybe the tests can cost a lot, if I can say on that. So if you are making some mistakes or if you are missing one test on your budget, it can really be a catastrophe for some companies that are really having some tight timelines.
Yeah, testing can run anywhere from, I mean, on the really low end, $15,000, $20,000 to well over $100,000.
Okay.
So and that's US dollars I'm talking.
Yeah. So it's something that people have to plan to budget. And if you have not budgeted that at the beginning, and if you don't have the money for doing all those tests, it can be a catastrophe for your timeline, for your project, for everything. And you cannot stop in the middle and say, okay, now I'm done. I'm doing what should I do? So yeah, it's why preparation is maybe something. So invest a bit more time maybe on the preparation so that you have all the risk management file, the essential performance analysis, the usability, etc. available, the test plan available. And after that, you can
also software.
And so, yeah, exactly. So it's something that
there's a lot of details.
It's something that people have to understand. It's not
just time.
It's not just one test to do and then we are done. It's really a lot of tests, and you have to prepare that and to be really smart on this. In terms of IEC 60601, we talked a lot about harmonized standard or consensus standard. So can we say that, as we said, maybe this is really the state of the art for this type of equipment or this type of test that should be done? So do notified bodies recognize that as the standard that everybody has to follow?
That is the question to answer. And I don't think every notified body has the same answer at this point.
Okay.
Because I got training maybe a month or so ago from NSAI, who I'm contracting with currently. And we haven't even gotten our solid answer back yet, but the commission came down with some answer, which we haven't seen the follow-up document from yet. And they said, yes, use state of the art. And we were supposed to get a follow-up document, which we have not seen. So that's what NSAI is going to base it on, but I don't know that every notified body is going to follow that. That's our internal, what I've heard.
So
that's all I know.
So every notified body has then to decide by himself. So this is the issue.
I can't answer for sure.
It's completely fine.
I wish I knew, but I don't.
I think it's completely fine. It's just that, yeah, we have a lot of people are talking about that. And what we hope is that we have all the same understanding of this standard, of the fact that it's a state of the art for everybody and that we are really moving forward on the right direction. Because medical device companies don't like when there is some unknowns.
Wishy-washy.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a bit difficult. Okay, so Leo, I think we have really covered a bit of an overview of this standard. So now, how can you help the medical device companies? So because we talked about the fact that you are doing some of the work with them and helping them, and also working with some notified bodies like NSAI. So how your company can help the medical device manufacturers?
Well, first I want to tell you about a webinar that I'm going to that I've done. It's on the 601, but it's on the amendments, which is something much more advanced than the basics that we just talked about. But it's on the updates past what I just talked about, because we just talked about about third edition amendment 1.
Okay.
And amendment 2, 3.2 is just about to publish, or by the time the podcast comes out, maybe it's going to come out. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know the timing exactly. But it's on the collaterals and the general standard, and that YouTube will be out. I don't know exactly. We'll get the link out to you.
Okay.
And it'll be on the series and some of the major changes that are happening.
Okay.
So I'll give you the link, and you can pass it on.
Great. So thank you. I will put that on the show notes for people to look at this webinar. So more.
And it'll be a big deal for people to be aware of. So that's the first thing.
Okay.
So how can I have for 601? Because that's really what I'm talking about here. So that's my focus. So of course we can provide a wide variety of support. Act as your compliance engineer to help you get through any 601 type of support you need. Provide gap analysis on your 601 products against any 601 standards. Help you in more detailed product and document reviews. For product testing, review the product against the standard. Review your literature, your packaging, your labeling, product markings, because all of that is involved in 601. There's a lot of labeling requirements in 601. Provide more detailed training, public or tailored training, against also the new amended standards that are coming out. And we're also putting together gap analysis for that. Also giving you gaps to standards, regulations, laws, and guidances. Be a conduit with your test houses, or as I say, an interpreter, because that's an issue for a lot of people, and lots of other things, but those are the major things.
No, I think it's great. So I think, as I've said, you really you need really to get some professionals to help you. So please contact Leo Eisner so that he can really provide you some good tips, because I think you have enough experience now with this standard, so you can really give them information about maybe some pitfalls that can happen if you are not following this or that, or maybe also some requirements from the notified bodies or from the inspectors, FDA inspectors, which will be also a great source of information for you to avoid to have some misses on your projects, and to have some issues in terms of timeline. So Leo, where people can follow up with you then?
With my email, leo@eisnersafety.com.
Okay.
Or my website, www.eisnersafety.com.
Right.
There's a contact form on the website as well, at the contact us link on the far right side, I believe.
Great.
Or LinkedIn, which you have my LinkedIn contact, I believe, and also my Twitter
Great.
feed.
So the handle on Twitter is Eisner Safety. So it's good.
Yes.
Easy to
Very
recognize.
easy. Yes.
Good. So Leo, really thank you. I think it was really important, I think, for people to really understand this major standard, IEC 60601. So for the people that are listening to this podcast, so thank you for watching that or listening that on your car or doing your workout. Don't forget to provide a review. Don't forget to make any comments because if you have any question also, you can go directly to Leo, or you can ask directly on the comments of the video, and I will share that with Leo as soon as I have it. Don't forget also that there is some information that are also on the website on easymedicaldevice.com. So please go there, go on the show notes of this episode, and you will get all the downloads that Leo will share with me. So download of the slides that he was talking about, plus the webinar that we will share, the webinar that is talking about the IEC 6601 amendments. Okay, so Leo, really thank you. It was really a pleasure to have you on this episode, and really thank you for coming. And then I wish you really a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.